first, thank you for having me here. It's very nice to be here, so I thank Liz and Terry and the rest of the Words Allow crew for inviting me. We know Durham a little bit because we have friends that live in the neighborhood, in the countryside. I've been noticing the artwork that's around here. It all seems to be on a literary theme, and actually when I saw this here, I thought someone had done a brain scan of the inside of my head. That's kind of what it looks like when I try to start writing a poem, you know, and then like in Harry Potter, I take my magic wand of a pencil, put it to my forehead, and then hopefully I can get a nice little string of words that come out and form a poem. Anyway, so I've enjoyed the art that's on the walls as well. I'm going to start my reading with a little quiz. So this may date me, but I will give you the questions, and then at the end of the poem I will tell you what the answer is. So you have to put these three things in chronological order. And the first one is the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, when John Glenn circled the Earth 3 times in the Mercury capsule, and the Beatles' first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. Okay, don't say anything out loud now. So this poem is called Planetary Lives. Somewhere on the planet, the perfectly rounded white nose of an aircraft faces you through the plate glass window of the departure lounge, and the jet turbine engine slows until it appears no more portentous than a house fan unplugged, as a supremely powerful machine completes one journey, and now will be readied to loft you on yours. The past is revisitable. You may return physically to the street or town, the rural route of your raising. It all looks the same, or it doesn't. Or its faithfulness to the facts of memory hinges upon changes within your own landscape, rather than on its recurrence so close to your body. Flying, driving, walking, you stand at last in the middle of your old prairie school field on the same day, coincidentally, that senior citizen Glenn is lofting into the stratosphere a second time, happy as a boy. But the schoolyard isn't a field anymore. New buildings fill its vast open space. The horizon has been raised. There is less sky. The long jump sand pit and the rectangular egg of the boarded outdoor skating rink are elsewhere, while the tetherball pole no longer stands near the door you blasted through at the recess bell to get there first, to hand bat the hanging ball around the post it is tethered to the top of, against the hand that wants to send it counterwise into ever faster, shorter circles until the inflated orb pulls snug to the axis of the foot-packed world and stops. I loved that game. It was something I was good at. I loved the immediate post-win unwinding of the ball, pursuing its languorous momentum in perfect, widening spirals of return. It will occur to you, then, that your only connection to the current landscape of your school age is that you stood here also on that day 13,000 rotations back when the astronaut John Glenn first spun 3 times around the Earth. You carry with you the first patch of ground you intimately know each inch of when you go, where it is free to remain unchanged as you travel on or off the planned trajectories, observing from the tail end of the thin thread that connects you, a prairie river's no-hurry meander to Hudson. How blue from above the whole planet appears. How transfixingly lovelier each time round. And though you sense that your brief stay here originates in some galactic elsewhere, you may wish to remain, seeking a place to touch down as often as humanly possible. Water. Now you want to know the results of the quiz. Maybe I should have said that John Glenn circled the earth later again as a senior citizen, if you didn't know that. I think that was right. Right. Oh, that was... So John Glenn circled the earth the first time in February 20, 1962. Kennedy was assassinated in November 22nd, 63, of course. And the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan in February 64. I was going to ask, when was Love Me Do released? Oh, brother. Yeah, October 5, 62. Anyway, nice going. Okay, so that Planetary Lives is sort of a bit of an ode to the landscape that I spent my childhood in, which was actually Edmonton. And this one is a shorter poem that's kind of an ode to the place where my wife and I have lived for the last 30 years. So this is our present landscape. And this poem is called Giants. We live on the Niagara Escarpment, or right there. As you do here too, don't you? Isn't that an interesting connection? We're way down in Hamilton. And I hesitate to say that because I know people have certain visual image of Hamilton. You knew? And I'm here to tell you it doesn't fit that image at all. So this poem is called Giants. There used to be giants, and they loved it here. They'd sit their giant hinds in a row along the top edge of the escarpment and pick at the loose rock with their hands or their feet, then throw or skip the smoothest stones across the bay to see who could land one on the sand strip 3 miles away. Or they'd spring themselves off the scarp top like you would off a low wall and go running all the way to the end of the sandbar and jump across the water to the other side, or jump in, splashing and yelling up the ravines, chasing each other's echoes. This was only a few thousand years ago, and the giants were still excited about the glaciers, which were just leaving, about not having to wear their coats all the time, and what the ice and water had done, shaping and carving this gentle, wild landscape. They loved it here. I'm telling you, they absolutely loved every living minute here. And they regretted ever having to leave. Thank you. So every now and again a person has a dream, and every now and again they'll take their dream and write it down without really knowing what it means, or possibly not even wanting to know. This one is probably the product of having watched too many Westerns when I was a kid, but it popped up in a dream later. This poem is called The River. He came to a place, the edge of a low bluff, overlooking the wide river of a dozen Western movies, and knew immediately that he'd always wanted to cross one of these broad prairie rivers with its stone and pebble shallows, the unknown strength and depth of its middle current, on horseback, and he was on horseback. And he knew just as instantly that he couldn't take his stuff along, the boxes covered in white canvas tied down with rope that had materialized out of the corner of his eye. If he wanted to cross, he'd have to leave it all behind. He imagined his animal entering the shallows, hooves on stones in running water, the possible shifting underfoot, the steady work against a heavy downstream pull, and rising, perhaps, on the other side, dripping. Would he look back? Probably. There was no hint of irony, no sense that this scene had played innumerable times before on innumerable screens in every darkness. He felt as though he was being provided with a piece of information, visually, "you are here." That this circumstance required a decision from him was where the moment lay. He was happy with his dream and felt honored by it. What troubles him now, if trouble is the word, is how the dream repeats. So I have been known to go canoeing upon occasion, and this poem arose from such an occasion, and I'm not going to say anymore. It's called Art, and because I thought I'd read this because some of us may have missed church this morning. So Art. In the church where we go to now, no one will object if you were to understand the light wind that came up a moment ago and has come up again at this moment, brushing against your skin, if you were to take it personally, as directed to you in particular, this breath of air. Though some of these smaller events are not communicable, are meant for you alone. In the church where we go to now, there is no grand agenda. A thin line is stretched or strung, neighbor to neighbor, between the beauty of this world and the obvious daily misery that exists next door. Some days, there is nothing wrong with the world. Two birds, whose exact location remains a mystery, are speaking to you, it is true, from within the multitudinous leaves of a single tree which has just come to life, the wind again. There is also the orange-feathered spray of this high-born cirrus clouding at what was known once as the waning of the day. A finely rendered display, beautiful, changing, and complete. But is it art? I mean, is there a hand? In the church where we go to now, 4 campers sit or slouch around a beach fire beside a lake in northern Quebec. The moon is intently illuminating the filigree of clouds. The water is intensely reflective. Art is the product of human culture, one states. Another replies, sky, water, rock, trees. It is all art, and we are part of it. It is humanly possible to stand between the individual drops of a light shower of rain, to witness the damp dots paint the sidewalk or the sand and not be touched or struck. The next day, the four are caught between the water they are canoeing upon and the water that is descending ever more abundantly from above. Thunder booms. "This isn't fun anymore," shouts one from the bow. "It's on the cusp of sucking." Later, at least one of the four will think of recent stories and people fleeing the thunder and flashes of light that flattened their towns and cities in some country somewhere on the globe, and who are living outdoors in the mountains and woods, the report said, with winter coming. In the church where we go to now, we paddle to an inhospitable shore for safety and stand among and on the rocks, hours from home, in mild desolation, as the high social realism of an autumn downpour connects the dots between ourselves and everything else that is wrong with the world, artfully. Thank you. This is a single book, so there's some overlap in themes, obviously. I'm going to read the title poem. It's called Disarmament. As you can tell, when I write poems, I am not the soul of brevity. I am I am on the longer side of things. So yes, this is called Disarmament, and I don't think it needs any introduction. If you sit on the third floor balcony of your 26-story apartment building downtown, you may find yourself staring down the barrel of a 25-pounder gun, a howitzer, positioned on the front lawn of the military museum across the street, and feel perfectly confident that it is disarmed, or hope so. We carry no weapons here. There is a formal requirement to love the one who stands beside the howitzer, whether the howitzer be disarmed or armed. And this keeps us in constant communication with the unseen one who stands behind the one who tomorrow may stand poised beside the howitzer. For there is always the part of us that considers the defense of our own bodies to be in our own hands, that would avenge injustice, the suffering of ourselves and others, regardless of formal requirements. And if they come with knife or fire, or if the gun is held to my daughter's head, if I and mine are driven into hiding under the high-level bridge, fleeing roundup, awaiting the inevitable with others of our social, religious, ethnic, or national community, no, I do not beforehand know what my response will be. Our lives run through our fingers like water, salt or red, the liquid drops that fall from our bodies, the bodies of others, fall onto the heated surface of current events. The drops suffer and dance across the surface and are released into the air. They rise as the unseen vapor of supplication and intercession. Our lives are the prayer given up against a cycle of violence. The prayer forms a cumulo witness, condensing under the floor of heaven. And you who read sky and radar screen, who understand the behavior of wind and cloud, the markings on overhead jets, How is it that you cannot detect the flight of the Spirit, my brother, my twin, or where a reconciling rain might fall? The war is never elsewhere. The seeds of conflict float down on parachutes. Its roots run deep as dandelions in the front lawn of the military museum. Our enemy currently lives behind a door on the 7th floor of the same downtown apartment building. He and his friends, male and female, toss bottles, shout up and down from balcony to ground at all hours, keeping us in constant communication with the unseen one who sits beside us on our balcony, who lies beside us in our bed, listening. Inevitably, the volume is turned up as they dance to further taunt his formal requirement. Tonight, we lie awake and invite the Spirit come brood over our 26 stories, the storied conflicts of a tired world, to tuck us under wing, all. Come, love, disarm us. So I'm going to read a few poems from this new manuscript that is not yet, doesn't officially have a title yet, but I guess I'll tell you about this first, because this is a kind of a binder from World War II, because my dad used this in World War II in Holland when he was selling seed to farmers. He was allowed to keep doing his work, selling seed to farmers and buying their crops. He was also in the underground, but I didn't hear a lot of stories about that and didn't think to ask until too late. So anyway, I have this, so it's still in use. I like it. In any event, so that was that poem, and this is this poem. It's also kind of based on the same sort of circumstances, but it's another dream where your dream surprises you. It's called Desire or Fear. I shot a man last night, but only in a dream. He was running, trying to keep away from me. He promised I could never catch or even catch up to him, then disappeared from sight. When he reappeared in the distance, a stooped shadow moving through the black trees and the rock, I was lying on my stomach in the snow, aiming a rifle at a spot a few feet in front of him. I was so surprised he fell that I didn't fire again when he stood and stumbled on, favoring the shoulder I must have hit. So, and then I thought I'd go to another canoeing poem of a different nature. And what did you say earlier? No turds? I can't tell you how weird it is that you said that, and I'm going to read this. This is called Purgation. Dear God in heaven on earth, this river, these friends, why so much shit? With the others, it's once a day, once every other, that they split from the group, the site where we're camped, tents up, fire going, and each in turn heads for the woods, glaring white donut roll of tissue paper in hand as they move through leaves, tracing a path to the treasure chest. Except for the bugs, it's a fine place to sit. Though, however much within the forest you think you feel, the forest can't pretend that you're not there. And you, pants around the ankles, propped on a wooden box, can't pretend to be blending in. You take it with you when you go downriver, in canoe. Food, clothing, shelter, a chosen few items and effects, cleansed but for the basics, you take it all. Surprising in the end, as straps cinch tight the pack, how little space it all takes up. Breakfast, break camp, last act before pushing off, toothpaste spat in fire pit, where flames of campers to follow will kill the scent, and other whiffs of us, coffee grounds, plate scrapings, also tossed in to keep the animals not attracted. I enter the forest again, jack on box. Dear God in heaven, why so much of this stinking to high heaven am I who I am? So we used to go to a cabin here on Erin Lake, and one time when I was there with my daughter, I made a mistake. And that's what this poem is about. It's called Hindsight. She's a teenager. It's not hard to make a mistake with a teenager. The surprise bird, flushed from roadside weeds, pauses a split second, weighing its odds against the firing squad of the front grill, almost lingers, last cigarette, then takes the dare, stuns us both in a sudden dive under the car. Bad choice. Mirrored in the rear view, its fleet shape shattered by the metals that propel us, the bird tumbles a feather-crazed, "Oh, damn, I shouldn't have done that," high over the pavement, then swan songs the gravel shoulder, a rough black heap. We travel on in silence, my daughter and I, our innocence in doubt. And the plot thickens later that afternoon as, returning from town, she practice drives the quiet concession roads to the cabin. And I am lulled by her savvy, her wheel ease, a natural, the cyclone of open windows, the music we chose, when suddenly she swerves, plows into the shoulder's tall grasses. Dream over. We switch seats. I back the car onto the road, no big deal, but we proceed in slow shock. I could have killed us both, she cries. There is the fact of our fragile enormity upon the landscape, which I forgot, my young bird, while breezing through the daring slipstreams of choice and chancing it. And the inattentive lapse, yours and my own, so very mirrored in the crushed grass and your face. Thank you. I used to have a couple more. I have reached the age, the hoary old age, I've reached the age where the events depicted in this poem seem to take place. It has to do with aging parents. It's called Emptying the House. A man I've never met before has counted out $350 on my mother's kitchen table and carried most of her furniture, including the kitchen table, and with my help, out the front door and onto the bed of his black pickup truck, letting in a lot more cold air than necessary. Our mother did not see her 4 children for 2 days reunite to clear out, clean, box and save, divvy, give away, or dispose of every single item in her life, not already gone, to furnish the one small but comfortable room in the home she recently was moved to. The furniture looked much more shabby and used without her to mend our vision. It made the work easier, but we had no idea how much work she was doing, sitting in her chair, filling crossword puzzles by the score, holding together not only herself, but all the smaller stuff that was so precious to our growing up, though their potency disrobed, surprisingly, before our eyes, when plucked from their familiar groupings on shelves and furniture tops and herded onto the table where we chose. You could have spun the table like the crazy aluminum Lazy Susan serving tray that none of us wanted, for how the silver teaspoons and stainless egg cups, the copper, brass, pewter, glass, and Delftware whirled out of orbit without the gravity of her at the center, a gravity they'd enjoyed with no moth or rust since forever. We ventured in to corners of closets and dresser drawers, private as prayer, places we dared and desired to explore only as children, and grew talkative and involved till it got late, too late to spend as planned the small windfall of cash on dinner together. And we called for a pizza with everything on it to be delivered to the door she would no longer be opening or closing anymore, and sat on the carpet with paper serviettes, the beautiful embroidered napkins, placemats, and tablecloths of our mother's handcrafting prime, having been claimed by my sister on the first morning we 4 were together for the first time in our lives since forever, and carefully folded away. Thank you. So this is going to be my last one, having been born and raised in the church, I had certain ideas of what it might be like to die and go to heaven, or not. So, and this is sort of perhaps what I might say my later theology. It's called Crossing into Heaven. So, your old Sunday school teacher had it right all along about Peter at the pearly gates. Surname, the saint asks, gazing up at you over the rim of his reading glasses, as one by one he begins to turn the pages of a large book. Ah, yes, he says, inclines his head and scrolls a long finger down the printed text. In the brief eternity that follows, you can't help but notice that the paper is handcrafted, possibly Japanese, and wonder if this is a good sign. The old apostle looks up at last, removes his glasses, and sighs. He explains that he has no choice. He seems genuinely sorry, but inadequate funding and staff cuts have hampered research, leaving your record contradictory and incomplete. It isn't the first time. The keeper of the keys then confides that some days he feels no better than a border guard for a country without enough self-respect to lock its doors, like Canada. Your heart swells and lifts a little, a balloon you're suddenly anxious to hang on to forever and ever. With a resigned but hopeful, anything to declare? The saint waves you through, but not before you've caught the unmistakable, jubilant sounds of a trio in dire need of a saxophone player. And you've played the sax, you want to tell him, almost since the day you were born, although you must confess, you didn't know that little fact until this very moment. Thank you.